what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Brothers in Tech is a weekly podcast focused on personal and home technology, helping provide you, our fellow brothers and sisters in tech, with some information, assistance, and recommendations. We love talking about home automation and smart homes here on Brothers in Tech, but be warned, this episode we take it a bit further. We talk about ways to incorporate more devices into your smart home system, but to do so requires going under the hood and may involve some light coding. If this sounds up your alley, join us for this week's Brothers in Tech. Hi everyone, welcome to Brothers in Tech here on the Mesh.tv. Alan Jackson, Brian Jackson, right here, side by side. See, we've got this down. We are video pros now. We are video podcasting pros.
Should we go back to audio now? Is that, have we conquered this or what?
I think we just ditch it. We just go straight back to audio now from here on out.
Keep challenging ourselves.
That's right. Brian Jackson, Alan Jackson, Brothers in Tech here. We get together about every week, pretty consistently.
We try to.
Talking technology, but we talk home and family, personal technology. Don't get into a lot of enterprise and big corporate technology, but we talk about the technology that you use or could use in your everyday life, or your family could use, or you could find in your home. Technology that we kind of spend a lot of time focusing on ourselves and working on trying to get better with and making having more use for. And Brian, I'm going to go ahead and say that tonight's episode is going to be a little different. Normally, we like to cover a topic and say, all right, we're just going to learn all about this topic, or we're going to explore this type of technology and help people understand what it is and how you can use it. This episode, is it okay, Brian, if I get just a little geekier, like a little more detailed than normal, a little more in depth than normal?
So let me just change your premise there, where you say normally we like to do things. Maybe we say normally we like to do things where all of you will be really interested in what we're talking about.
Okay, that's
and
fair.
Today, Alan came up with a topic, so we have no clue as to whether or not anyone is going to be interested in this.
Yes, this will be an episode that appeals to an audience of possibly one, me.
Maybe, yeah, right.
Maybe.
Right. I'm thinking you're rethinking it right now as well. So
no, I still love talking about this stuff. So even if it's just me that's getting something out of it, Brian, I'm okay with that. We are going to get a little detailed on something. So I'm giving permission to people that look, if you watch or listen and you just want to kind of learn some basics of different types of technology and get some of the definitions down or understand what things can do, this is going to go a lot deeper than that. There's actually going to be screens of code involved. It's going to get pretty deep, but I think the overall idea of what we're going to talk about is still going to be pretty interesting. So, in depth, deep dive.
Interesting as in your love for like backup, for the episode we had before.
No, this isn't come close to backup. No, this isn't.
Not nearly as interesting as backup.
This isn't a passion of mine like backing up strategies are. This is going to be a little different.
All right. Buckle up, fans. Buckle up.
Here we go. This is going to be continuing. We talked a lot about home automation over the time. It seems to be kind of a recurrent theme we like to get into as we talk about home and personal tech. Home automation is a big element of that. So we're going to talk about extending your home automation capabilities by welcoming in devices or pieces of electronics that may not be meant for what you're trying to do, but there are ways to turn it into part of your smart home setup. So, Brian, the best way I can explain this, let me back up a little bit. I am a HomeKit user. Okay, I have adopted the HomeKit home automation, framework as what I want to use in my home. So, anytime I go out and buy a device that I want to use in my home, in my smart home setup, I'm looking for a HomeKit. That is Apple's version of home automation. It has to have the little HomeKit icon on the box to let me know this is something I can use with HomeKit.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of people out there, if you're an Apple or Mac user, especially if you're an iPhone user and you're just kind of, it makes it so easy to use that iOS, that platform to turn on home automation. I see a lot of people are probably very tempted to just kind of stay in that neighborhood if they can. But I walk into a store, I walk into a Best Buy or some other electronic store, tons of home automation devices everywhere. Switches, light bulbs, security cameras. You got all these things. The number of times you see the little HomeKit icon on it, it's pretty slim, because Alexa and Google are kind of the two big platforms that all of these manufacturers are going to make stuff for. So it can be a little frustrating for somebody like me, who I really want everything to work with HomeKit, but I see some like either less expensive devices I want to use. I see a better variety. There's some devices that just, there is no HomeKit compatible version of it. So it's disappointing.
Yeah.
The other
Alan,
side,
do you think, just real quick, is that is that Apple acting the same way it does with its phone, to be able to not open it up for lots of different people? So they're really being protective as to who jumps into this space with them, right?
Well, I get the impression it's kind of they have a certain set of standards that have to be met by the device, and then also adherence to Apple's policies and approval process, which are going to be possibly a little more stringent or strict than others. That's what I've heard. Maybe the licensing, I don't know if the cost to license the HomeKit is more prohibitive as well. And plus, I mean, to be honest, I mean, even though Apple has obviously continued to grow and hold a pretty good market share, there's still a lot more non-Apple devices than there are Apple devices out there. So if you're going to kind of swing for the fences and try to get a platform that's going to be the most universal, I mean, Google and Amazon kind of are taking that path. So that's one situation that I was looking to resolve, and I've got a solution for that, for people who want to bring other smart devices into their HomeKit network without them being HomeKit native compatible.
Okay.
The other side of the coin, Brian, is we all have some technology laying around. I've got one right over my shoulder, a projector in my den here that does not work with any smart home technology. It works with a traditional old remote control, and it's an IR infrared remote control to it. So that's the only way you can communicate with it. There's no built-in smarts on it to tie it into Alexa or Google or HomeKit or anything like that. So that's yet another category of devices that we have had to say, well, that's not going to work with our HomeKit, our home setup, and so be it. Well, there's actually ways to build those kind of products in too. I'm going to get a little crazy and talk about how you can do both at the same time, but I think both scenarios may have some applicability to people watching or listening, if you're still with me at this point. I don't know if anybody's still watching.
Well, we may have lost the one or two that actually did join us to begin with, but
sorry about
that.
But
I'm with you.
Brian,
with you.
I'm just going to talk to you.
As much as I normally listen to you, I'm listening about that same amount right now.
I would expect nothing more.
But let me just clarify. So real quick, you're saying you've got some devices like your projector that you can't just plug into a smart outlet and have it turn on, because that just provides power. It doesn't necessarily start it up, right? It's got some features that will need some additional like remote control action for it to be able to happen, right?
That's right. So good point. Some people, I've had that question when I've mentioned my projector before, and they say, well, people say, well, just put it on a smart outlet and just, have the outlet turn on and off. Well, it doesn't work that way. This projector does not turn on automatically whenever it gets power. So
it turns on to standby.
Yeah.
But
I do not want to I do not want to basically to turn off my projector. I don't want to just yank the power out of it, which is what a smart outlet would do.
Right.
It needs to do a proper shutdown to turn the projector off.
Yep.
So those are the reasons why a smart outlet's not going to work on those situations. So really, I have no other option at that point for controlling it, except for what we're going to talk about here in a moment. But let's start on the HomeKit side, and then we'll go over back to the IR side, because they are going to kind of come together in the end. Let's talk about HomeKit first. So as an Apple HomeKit user, you're wanting to bring in other devices that are maybe Google or Alexa compatible devices into your HomeKit environment. Okay. There is a way to do it. So we're going to talk a little bit about a product called Homebridge. Brian, I take it you've not ever played with this, correct?
I have not.
Okay.
No.
So I'm going to show a little screen what it looks like. This is the website. First off, the note, Homebridge is a software product that will run on a computer, on a Mac computer. So that's right away kind of provision number one you got to keep in mind, is that this actually has to be running on a Mac on your home network. Right there, it might be a little prohibitive to people that don't want to dedicate a Mac computer to just sitting there running it. Now, you can run it on a Raspberry Pi. You can run it on some other things. You can even run it on Windows. You can run it on different computers, but you do have to have a device that's always going to be on in your home network to run this platform. Okay.
Okay.
But
so just to clarify, you said
well, you're going to have a lot. You're going to have a lot of questions.
You know what? Because I'm going to pretend like I'm riveted by this.
I was hoping this might be like a 15minute episode, but I can tell from your questions already. No, we're going an hour on this.
I'm not sure we've ever had an opportunity to do that.
Right.
So you were saying that as long as you have a device that's on, whether it's Raspberry Pi or Mac, right? It just needs to stay on. It needs to be a constant hub for what you're doing, right?
Correct.
So that particular hub, even though you're looking at something like HomeKit, which is Apple, right? You could run a Raspberry Pi to do this.
Yes,
okay.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to clarify. Yep.
Yeah,
got it.
It's even showing right here all the different Linux, Raspberry Pi, Mac, Windows, all of those. If you have a computer of any of those types that is sitting on your home network that can be plugged in, or you can do it over wireless. They recommend really having it kind of hardwired, plugged into your internet, your network in your home. But it needs to be on all the time.
Okay.
And that's because you want to make sure that this service is always running whenever you need it to actually do something that you're going to ask it to do. If it was only on a few hours a day for whatever reason, or if you're running it off of a laptop that's not always on, well, then when you try to use the functionality, one of the remotes we're going to talk about in a minute, it's not going to work. This has to be running to make all the HomeKit connections work.
Okay.
The way they pitch this, which I love, is HomeKit support for the impatient. It's people who don't want to wait for a device to be HomeKit compatible. They want to go ahead and use it. You found a great smart device at Best Buy. I want to use it in my HomeKit environment. Well, this is the tool to do that. Okay. So Homebridge is free. It is an open source platform, meaning there's a community supporting it and developing it. Pros and cons of that. Pro is it's free. You can download it and install it. I had it installed in about 3 minutes. Easy to do. The con is, it's going to go through a lot of updates. It's going to get updated a lot. If something doesn't work, you're kind of having to go online on your own to go figure out why and get your own support for it. But, if that's something that is exciting to you or interesting, then this may be a good solution to go on.
Yep.
So Homebridge, bringing HomeKit support where there's none. It's even saying, hey, it's got a lot of plugins for things like Ring cameras, which are not right now HomeKit compatible. The Hues, the Philips Hue are not always native. Some of the original ones are not native HomeKit, and some of the ones you can get different versions are not. Belkin Wemo, like some of the Wemo plugs are HomeKit compatible, but other Wemo devices are not. So anyway, it's just letting you know, these are all ones it can like plug into right away. The way Homebridge works is that you install it on this computer and it's running on that computer all the time. And you then go in and install plugins into Homebridge based on what devices you want to connect to your home network. Okay. So let me show you what this looks like, Brian.
Can't wait.
I can tell you're super excited. All right, here we go. So this is when you run Homebridge on a computer, this is what it looks like. It is in a web browser screen, but it's basically it's just running on the computer the whole time. And in Homebridge, you're able to go in, you install Homebridge on the computer, and then you have to use that QR code and you snap it with like an iPhone, and that will then automatically add your Homebridge network into your HomeKit network. Okay. So you're basically connecting it at that point. So anything you do on Homebridge will then automatically show up on your HomeKit network.
So the HomeKit becomes almost like a hub that gets recognized by, HomeBridge becomes
HomeBridge is
a hub that it recognizes, right? So
That's
it's
right. Just like
HomeKit
when you
recognizes
add
HomeBridge, but
when you
HomeBridge
add a
then spreads
bridge
it
or a
out.
hub device to your HomeKit
Yep.
situation, that's what it sees this as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
And it gives you a nice interface saying, hey, it's up to date, it's running, and then it'll tell you, kind of how much memory it's using, all these other geeky things. It's kind of nice to see about it, but it's basically letting you know it's working, it's running. You can honestly have this just minimize and running in the background of your computer, but it does need to be running, on the computer itself. So with the way this works now, if let's say you've got this installed, you've connected it to your HomeKit. So on my HomeKit, if I pull up my phone and go to my home app, anything I add to this HomeBridge will then automatically show up as one of the cubes on HomeKit as something I can control. So then I have to go into my plugins, and plugins are where you're going to add plugins specific to different devices you want to add in. So let's take, for example, the Philips makes the Hue?
Yes.
Let's see. I might have spelled Philips wrong. Okay. So the Philips Hue device, for example, those light devices. Let's say if there's some of those Philips devices you bought that are not HomeKit compatible. If you can go in, once you've got HomeBridge installed, you can actually search for a plugin that will give you the compatibility to connect with it. Now, good and bad on this as well, this whole plugin community. There's a lot of plugins out there, tons of them. I haven't found a device yet that I haven't been able to find a plugin for. But the plugins are all written by individual people, users. It's you have to kind of bank on them that they wrote something that's going to be good and work. And obviously, if there's something broken, it's not like you really have a support line to call to or find out how to fix it. Luckily, they do a pretty good job letting you know when certain ones have been verified by the developers that made them. But I just typed in Hue, and I can see right away there's a HomeBridge Hue plugin, HomeBridge Philips Hue Sync Box, which is HDMI sync box, the ambient Hue. A lot of different plugins I can play with. And all you have to do is simply say install. Okay. When you install the plugin, it's going to go through some code. That's where I told you the code was going to come in, because it's basically going through and it's downloading the plugin and installing it into your HomeBridge setup. And then in theory, if all goes well and you got the right plugin installed, you will see buttons then appear on your HomeKit that correspond with this device that you're installing the plugin for. Okay. So the Philips TV, this is what I'm actually going, the Hue Philips TV. And again, I don't know what I just did. I don't know what this is. I just chose one. So I have no idea what product this is actually working for. But basically it's allowing that to now be a box that's being added to your HomeKit. Okay. So now I see in my plugins, I've got that Philips TV Hue set up in there. So in theory, and again, this is all a lot of testing and trial and error, because again, there's so many plugins, you got to find the one that's going to make the most sense for the project you're looking for. But in theory, as long as you've got HomeBridge running, you added this device, then on your HomeKit, on your home app, you now will have a button that kind of maps to some of the functionality you could do through a smart device with that product you just added.
Nice. Okay.
So that's pretty good. I mean, that's pretty nice.
Very good.
And as you can see on the plugins again, if I just typed in what was another Wemo.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a Wemo, and there's a Wemo 3-way, which I think is like a light switch.
Yep.
Yep. So a lot of options to plug in. I can always go back to my status and just see how everything's looking. It's telling me, hey, your plugin's out of date. So I can go and update that, because it says right here, update is available. So I could run an update to it right now. Very easy. So it's once you get the hang of this interface, it's still a little daunting, but it actually is self-running. I don't ever have to go in here once I've set up.
I was going to ask. Yeah.
No.
I was going to ask you.
Honestly, this is the first time I've opened it up since I configured it, over a month ago.
Can you set it for auto updates?
Yep.
Okay, so it can continue to update itself. You don't have to worry about. So, and does it? Sorry to be in the weeds on this, but do auto updates? Can it be set to do auto updates in the middle of the night when you're not going to be needing it? Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and if your computer is set to restart, like just if you leave your computer on, but you want to have it do a restart every night, this is set up as one of the extensions that will load at system startup, so you don't have to worry about going in and starting it up or anything.
Nice.
Yeah. And it just all runs in a web browser. I mean, if I've got a button to restart, I can restart the whole home bridge if something was going weird and not working right. I can still to restart the whole system on the computer, or I can log out. And if I log out, then this is the screen I would pull up whenever I open up a web browser on that computer, and I can just log back in. All right.
Okay. I like
that in itself, it's pretty good. Homebridge, I think it's a really cool system to work with. Again, you may have to get your hands dirty a little bit with some looking up, different plugins and finding out there's different things you have to key in or type in on those plugins to make them work the way you want. Each one is handled a little differently, but the architecture is cool. And to know that you could add just about any name brand smart home device that's not a HomeKit compatible device and make it work with your HomeKit network. Okay. Now let's go the other side. Okay. Let me, the other side of the coin we talked about, and then we're going to bring them together. The other side of the coin is, regardless of if you're using HomeKit, Alexa, or Google, you've got an older piece of technology or a technology that doesn't use smart device capabilities at all. It just uses traditional IR remote controls. And we want to bring them into our smart home environment. Okay. Let's talk about that. There are devices that you can acquire that are meant to basically act as let me see if I can bring this up. Act as almost like a universal remote to bring IR controlled devices capable of working with your smart home setup. So this is an example. It's a pretty popular one. This one is from a company called Broadlink. It is a small little device. This is how big it is when you put it in your hand. Small little device. You connect it to your network, your Wi-Fi network. You have an app that works with this device. You connect this device to your Wi-Fi network. And then you can go into that same app and you can basically have it configured to learn your different IRs, and it has a database of all these different IR remotes. So it can find your remote and kind of sync up with the settings it gets up in the cloud. Basically, it will learn your remotes. So then the idea becomes it can work with Google or Alexa. It can actually show up on your Google Home Network or your Alexa Home Network. And any devices that are connected to it through the IR can now become capable for you to work with in a Google or Alexa home environment. Okay.
Okay. So this little device is recognizing the IR.
Yes.
Recognizing it through the air.
Yep.
So you need multiple of these, right? With a house that has multiple
rooms. Yes.
Rooms
Yeah.
that
but
potentially may have
it has
these.
a good capability to capture everything in a single room for sure.
Okay. Yep.
So think about where you would normally kind of, if you had a remote control, where you would be pointing. That's kind of, you just have that in that general direction. But now what it's doing is it needs to be able to have some visibility to your actual components that you're trying to control.
Yeah.
It's less important what the remote control, because the idea is that you don't use a remote control anymore once you get this set up. Okay. You basically, so for example, my projector, the one back here I gave this example earlier, uses an IR remote. If I wanted to, and I was not on HomeKit, if I was on Google or Alexa, because as you can see at the bottom of the screen right there, there's the little logo for Alexa. There's the little logo for Google. There's no logo for HomeKit. Okay. But if you are on one of those networks or one of those architectures, I could go in and say, okay, little guy, I want you to learn my projector remote's controls. And it's going to
Yep.
search and say, oh, I see the projector on my database and I've got the controls. So it's going to load them all up. So then when I go into my Google or Alexa, they are now capabilities I can control through that home network. So just like you see here, I mean, here again, got a happy family sitting on a couch. The guy says, hey, Alexa, change the channel to ABC News, because he's got it programmed to where that TV remote they would be using to change channels on their TV is now being controlled by Alexa because of that little device. Okay. So this acts as a bridge between there. Now you have to go in and still have it learn each of your remotes. There's a process to do that through the app and say, hey, here's the remote. If I remember correctly, I think it's even something where it kind of, you point the remote at the little IR blaster here, the little device.
You could learn it.
You have to do it a certain number of times and it learns it. And then you can decide what key commands from the remote you want to have mapped to your home Alexa or Google Home environment.
Yep.
Okay. So it's pretty nice. These devices are only like about $30 or $40. Pretty inexpensive.
That's what I was going to ask, because Alan, this all sounds very similar to, the Harmony Hub that I have, which I go in and train, or basically tell it, I have this device that are all IR compatible, and I want you to be on Wi-Fi and connect, grab anything I do with Wi-Fi, send it out via IR. But that's pretty expensive, right? The Harmony Hub is pretty expensive, say $200 and something for a remote plus the hub blaster. So this potentially you could do multiple rooms, 5 rooms, and have, 5 of these things and still be out better price-wise than the Harmony Hub would be, right?
Yes. I'm looking right now to get you an exact price on it because I forgot how much it was. The little mini that I just showed you is $25.
Perfect.
Yep. So,
and it does not need anything else, right? It's independent on its own. It will connect via Wi-Fi and receive the IR.
Yes.
So just one of those alone will automatically allow you to be able to control at least within that room. That's great.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's a great device. I love this. And I do have one here I'm using. It works great. I mean, if I went into the app that came with this device, I could see all the devices I've got running and learned IR functions for. And then I can see where I can connect it to the Google or Alexa home network and have those functions mapped over. So again, if I want to have voice command saying, hey, Alexa, turn on the TV, and in the app, I've got TV labeled and it knows the buttons on and off for the TV because it learned them from the remote, then it works with your voice, or you could work from your app, either way you want to do it.
Yes.
And once you can control it by Google or Alexa, then you got things like timers of when you can turn on and off things automatically, set routines or schedules for things to happen, which is all really cool. Now, you brought up a good point earlier about, there are some functionality things you need to keep in mind before you can control an IR device with a smart home setup. Good example. My projector, if I told it to turn off through a remote control, it actually, you have to hit the button twice on my remote to turn it off. Now, granted, if you hit it once, I think there's a long timeout function where it's going to wait to see if you press it again, then it'll eventually, I think we'll start trying to turn it off. But some devices, you actually, like projectors especially, you do have to hit the button twice. So with that becomes a little weird because you would tell Google, hey, turn my projector off, and it's going to send a command to that IR receiver to turn it off, but it won't send it twice in a row, which is what your remote would normally have to do. So some little things you'd still have to kind of test out and find out how it's going to work for you based on your device and how your IR remote works with it traditionally. But yeah, it's great. It supports over 50,000 IR controlled devices. Everything from air conditioners, fans, audio components, all of that. Okay. That's pretty cool. And there are other manufacturers that make devices like this, but I will say, I think you go and look, Broadlink is kind of the one that most people gravitate to because of its form factor and its size and the fact that it's a pretty robust little device for not a lot of money at all. But just
like
like
it.
anything else, you have to do a little. You got to do some programming, or not programming like coding, but you have to do the learning process. You'll have to go through the steps with each of your device. But once you get it done, it should work pretty well.
So it does not have any kind of built-in type your name, type the device in, and it recognizes here's all the settings that need to happen with that, or you need to manually teach it each thing.
I think you have to manually like do the pointing the remote to it,
the learn function,
and then it walks you through and says, okay, press power on, press power off on your remote, and it learns it. But then what it does is once it gets the signal from your remote, it downloads from its database all of the functions on that. And so you don't have to go through and program every button. You just have to connect it one time with the IR, and then it goes and finds it on its database and says, oh, I know this remote has these 20 functions. So now these are the 20 functions you have available to work with.
So for the listeners, those who have maybe looked at or want to know the difference between doing this and getting maybe a Harmony Hub, the Harmony Hub will have an app that you can go into that you type in and say, I have a Toshiba TV and it's this model number. And if it has it in its list, you click it and it automatically creates all the settings that it knows are going to be with that TV. So that's a benefit. However, I have noticed that doesn't always get updated appropriately. So you may type that in. It doesn't necessarily come back and always be correct. You still have to go into it and tell it a few things. You know, as you mentioned earlier, if you have a double click or a double press on power in order to turn it off, you may have to go in and tell it, say, hey, when I do this, I want you to do this, plus pause 2 seconds, do this again. And that's what I want. Even though I press one button, I want you to do 4 things, right? The Harmony Hub will also do that. Again, price-wise, it's more expensive. If you're talking about a hub right there, as Alan's shown on the screen, without the remote, I mean, that's $100 for still handling one room, right? This is still going to be something that would work with one room of devices. So as opposed to doing multiple 25 of each. So, the one I have is sorry, Alan, you can scroll up a little bit. Yep. Go right there. So I have the remote, down a little bit right there. What is a companion? Yeah. Harmony Companion. Right. That's what I have, which allows me to potentially control it with a phone, or I can also control it with the handheld remote, which I love a physical remote myself. So that's great, but that's, again, that's $150 right now.
Well, and it's also
compared to
right now, they're not available. Harmony has discontinued a lot of their, or Logitech's can discontinue a lot of the Harmony devices. So all the ones right now you see on the website are not available anyway. Yep. So if you're really keen on wanting to get IR remote devices on your home network, yes, the Harmony solution I think is a lot more probably just easier, and it's going to make it a kind of a better, sleeker way of doing it. But you're going to pay a lot more if you can even get one. Yep. The other device, $25. You have to kind of go in and do a little back end work to get it set up right, but it'll do basically the same thing without a physical remote that it comes with. You still have to use your smartphone to control it, or use your voice, whatever you choose to do, just like you would any other HomeKit device, or not HomeKit, Alexa or Google device. Yeah. I
mean, it's pretty slick because I imagine most people have some legacy type devices where they have a remote that they use with a DVD player, or they have a remote they use with an air conditioning unit, something like that. It would be great to start transitioning to voice only, or at least, and maybe I'll jump in here real quick and tell people it's not just about creating voice opportunities. It's about when you start to make things into a Wi-Fi system, you now have the ability to do sequences of things. You have the ability, as Alan, I'm sure, is working towards, theater time, right? Movie time. You say movie time, and 5-6 different things are going to happen, right? The lights go to this, the curtains go to this, the projector comes on, the speakers turn on, all of that stuff, right? And so that's really the beauty of this is, as Alan's mentioned before, automation, you should be thinking about sequencing things and making things a lot easier to do.
Yeah.
Long gone are the days where you need to go into a TV room and pick out 5 different remotes, turn them all on, and then try to remember which one you're going to be controlling the TV with, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's the whole goal here. So as I look at my room setup in here, I've got a projector that does not work with any smart devices. So I've got to connect it by the IR little device here I've got. I've got a sound system that does not work with smart home devices. So it also works on the IR. But my lights in the room are HomeKit compatible or home. So again, I can bridge them all together. So you're right. I can have one sequence, one command that will do a combination of both smart home devices and IR devices now being controlled at one action, which is kind of the holy grail.
That's pretty slick. Yep. That's pretty slick.
Now, I just mentioned something about how I did some IR functionality, but I did it through HomeKit. And you may be asking yourself, Brian, well, I thought you showed me that little IR receiver does not work with HomeKit. So how do you do that? Okay.
Oh, Alan, how do you do that?
So I was waiting. I was setting you up for that question just so you could prompt me back.
Yeah. I saw on the edge of my seat. Yes.
So just like I showed you on Homebridge, where I was taking and come back up to, let me bring back up my Homebridge again. The little Broadlink little IR device to pick up those signals. If I'm a HomeKit user and I'm using Homebridge, which I explained earlier, there is a plugin to allow it to work with the Broadlink RM Pro. I downloaded the plugin. So think about this, what this is now doing. So basically, I am adding capability to my HomeKit setup to where any device I program through the IR receiver will now get passed through and show up as a button on my HomeKit. So my projector behind me, because I've got it connected and going to IR through the little IR receiver, I've got the IR receiver connected to my Homebridge. Now there's a button I programmed to have on my HomeKit app that says turn projector on and off.
Yeah.
If I hit it, turns it on. And even better, when I hit it to go off, I've programmed it, which I'll show you how in a minute, to do 2 power offs in a row. So it actually truly does turn it off. Exactly what I want it to do.
Yep.
So now I can sequence everything in my house. I can have sound come on my sound system, projector come on, lights go off, all with one command on my HomeKit. All right.
Alan, did you have to go in and tell it like a timing of those 2 presses? Did you have to space it out?
Oh, this is going to be the fun part. Okay. This is the geeky part here. This is where it gets really, really deep in the weeds. Okay.
Yeah. So any person who's still with us, which
just listen, don't
God bless you. Right. Yeah.
We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Feel free to watch us later when you can't sleep at night.
Next week, we're doing our Brothers in Tech Suggestions episode. It's going to be a lot more fun.
Come back and join us.
Come back for that. If you're still here though, let me show you what this looks like.
I'm down like a really stiff drink of bourbon here, Alan, and so I'm still committed. All right, I'm still committed.
Okay. All right. So here's the deal.
I'm not sure I'll remember any of this that you're telling me, but that's okay. Carry on.
To make this all work together, I have to go in, and because this particular plugin has to use a configuration editor, you have to go in. Okay. I have to go in, and there's a way that anytime you press a button on an IR remote, it is technically sending a long string of numbers to that other device that it's trying to control. That little IR receiver box is getting those codes. The key is I have to go in and find out what codes are being transmitted and put those codes into this Homebridge plugin to make it all work. There you go. Take a drink. It's look at these things, Brian. Okay.
Oh, good
This
Lord.
is the code for my projector. I'm telling it is a switch that I want it to work. I mean, it has an on and off state. That is the code that is transmitted whenever you press the on button on a IR remote control for the projector. This whole
Alan,
long
for the audio listeners, do you want to read that for us real quick?
No, I don't. It's like 80 characters long. So it is a long string of numbers. Then for the off, Brian, to your question, here is the code for off, and I'm telling it to send 2 of them, a send count.
Mm-hmm.
This is all things I had to read up on and see what the coding was for all this, but I can tell it to send it twice, one after another, and that's what triggers the double press on an off power button. This is the tricky part, because you have to go in and actually, to make the the IR or RF transmitter work with Homebridge on this plugin, you've got to go in and identify the codes and then paste those codes into this script. It's not pretty. And it took me a while. It took a lot of trial and error, but I got it. And when you get it, it works. And you never have to touch it again, hopefully.
Yeah.
So that's the thing about this, there's my audio system to turn on my audio components on and off. That one's a little more simple because it's just a simple on and off on the power switch. So basically,
simple as in that's only about 60 characters, right? Yeah. Okay.
It actually, you have to go through a process where basically you put this RF transmitter, this IR receiver, in what's called a test mode. And then you take your IR remote control and you click the button you're wanting to get the code for. And when it's in test mode, it's going to display on the status screen in Homebridge what that code is. And you got to copy that code and go and paste it into the plugin. Okay. Yeah. Believe it or not, I mean,
how many different, I mean, actually, I'll tell you, it sounds exciting if I had the time to do it. Mm-hmm. But how many of these different commands did you have to do in your system just for the projector?
So, it's a little bit like, remember how it used to be when you used to try to program a universal remote many years ago, and you kind of had to keep pressing in codes of different manufacturers to see which one works. Cycles. It's kind of the same idea.
Yeah.
So basically I put the IR transmitter in test mode, and then say, okay, I'm going to press the power button on my projector, and I'm just kind of waiting to see what code comes out. And then I had to go and put that code in and try it and see if that works. Now, luckily, once I got the code, if the code transmits, it shows up. So it's just a little bit of trial and error, but not much.
Yeah.
So that's what you have to do to make that all work. Will somebody maybe come up with an easier interface to do this exact synergy? I'm sure at some point, probably so. But for now, this is the way you go in and set it up. I'm not here to try to teach everybody how to configure a plugin, and because you got to read the README files that come with this plugin and kind of see what the format is and see how you plug stuff in. More than anything, I just want people to understand there are ways to do this. If you're really adamant about getting non-HomeKit devices on your HomeKit network, there are ways to do it. And even more broadly, if you just have a home network of any type and you just want an old IR device, old IR remote device on your HomeKit, on your home network, there's ways to do that too. I think too many times we just go in and we say, well, the only things I can do that are smart devices in my home are things that I buy as new smart devices. Yep. Or, well, I'm a HomeKit user and I can't use these other devices because it's got to be a HomeKit. Yeah, in the simplest terms, yes. But if you really did want to use them, there are tools to let you do it. You got to get your hands dirty a little bit, but you can certainly do it. Yeah. And the good thing is it's almost free. I mean, Homebridge is free. That little RF transmitter is like $20, $25 to get.
Right.
If you think about it, you can actually buy some non-HomeKit smart devices like bulbs or other things cheaper than you can a lot of times HomeKit devices. So you will save that money back in some of those devices if you really want those other brand name devices on your home. So
real quick question. If you you only have one of those blaster devices, right?
I just have one in my den and that's it right now.
If you had multiple, that obviously can work on the same system because they would show up as individual hubs, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But do you know whether if I say, turn on whatever, and are both of those hubs going to then blast out the same signal?
Yeah, they probably will.
Okay.
Well, no.
No, you can tell it which hub is blasting the signal.
No, yeah, you can. Yeah,
Okay.
You're right. No,
Okay.
You can, because part of the code in that plugin is it identifies the actual
Which
RF
hub?
transmitter with
Yeah.
its own code. So
Yeah.
you could have multiple of those as long as you got the code for each one. You can say, all right, for this, when I press this button, I want to send it to this coded RF transmitter, send this long code to turn off that device. Yeah.
Yeah.
But also keep in mind,
That's
even
nice.
if it did blast out to all of them simultaneously, it's only going to be picked up by wherever the device is that actually is meant to get the signal. You see what I'm saying?
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
right.
if I've got a
Assuming you
projector.
don't have multiple devices that are kind of
Right.
responding to the same thing.
True.
Right. Yeah. It shouldn't be an issue. Right.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, for under $100, you could technically have a receiver like this in all your key rooms and program anything that you would normally use a infrared remote control for and have it work with your home setup pretty easily.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's fun and exciting. Again, I totally guarantee that as home automation continues to grow in popularity, they will create a way to do everything I just showed you on the coding side a lot more automatically and allow all devices to kind of feed into a home network a lot more easily. And I know too that they're rolling out new standards of home automation. Is it Plaid? Is that the?
Yeah, I think so. I thought there was one other one as well. Yep.
There's Plaid, and there's another one that's coming out that's kind of even Apple and Google and everybody's all signed on to.
Right.
support.
And I can't remember what the name of that is. Yep. But yes, eventually I think everyone is going to be on a similar standard. But it just as you showed, right, it's for the impatient, right? It's for the people that don't want to wait for that.
This may be like that 1 or 2 year kind of window of time where, if you really want to get everything tied together, this is the way to do it.
Right.
And then hopefully when everybody gets onto a more common standard in another year or two, I think they said delayed it to late 2022 when they would roll out this new standard. If I remember correctly, the news I saw this week. That's ideally where we want to be, but we're not there yet. So this is a good way. Again, like I said, you get your hands dirty. It's very detailed, a lot of trial and error. I spent a good part of a day just kind of playing with everything and just making it work. But once I got it working, it works. I don't have to go in and change anything. I don't have to go in and tinker with it. It just works. So then the only thing will be is if I want to add another device to the whole system, then I have to go through the process again. But, right now I can walk into my room, tell what's her name to turn on my projector and turn on my sound system, or I have them all one command, say, yep, it's movie time, and lights go off, projector comes on, sound system comes on, and it's great. It's kind of what I've always wanted out of the situation. So there are ways to do it. My message to everybody, there are ways to do it.
Yeah. Well, and I think specifically, there are certain components that I think some people are going to be not as eager to get rid of, that they've spent a lot of money on, high-end stereo, right? Component systems that have a remote, but why would you go and switch that to a Wi-Fi enabled, thing just to be able to put it on your network, right? To be able to have it come on and play Marvin Gaye whenever you say, let's get it on, right? I think that there's lots of things that you may want to do, but this is a great way to not have to get rid of some of that great equipment that you have, that the only limitation at this point might be the fact that it's an IR blaster, right? An old school remote, a regular remote. Right. Yep.
Sound systems are a perfect example. There's so many, sound systems, if you put a lot of money into a good sound system, 20 years ago, other than maybe needing some different adapters on the back to plug into different components, the sound is still really good.
It's still great.
There's people still kind of swear by their older sound systems. Yeah, there's no reason to go and upgrade it just to get something that's going to be controlled by Wi-Fi. If you can throw a $25 device and a little bit of sweat equity into it, and you can totally make it work. Yeah. So to be able to control your older 25-year-old stereo system from your mobile phone, volume up, volume down, switch inputs, whatever you want to do, to know you could do that with your voice or with a mobile app is pretty cool. Again,
Yeah,
you still can
very
use
cool.
your IR remote. It's not like
Right.
this eliminates that. It just gives you more options on ways to control it now.
Yeah. Yeah. And just, as a comparison. So when I use the Harmony Hub, Alan, you came to my old house when we were using that. We still had a receiver. And so when we clicked on that we wanted to watch TV, the TV turned on, it turned to a certain input. The receiver came on because we had in ceiling speakers, which of course means you need a receiver to be able to do that. It went to a certain input. The volume would now be controlled by, the receiver, not the TV. All of these things would happen. And that all happened with a Harmony Hub. This just sounds like a less expensive way to do exactly that, which is great, which is absolutely great.
Right.
So.
And again, the reason I went this route instead of even looking at the Harmony remote app version or route, it wasn't even really the cost. I mean, yeah, I love the fact that this is a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
Is that I knew that I could build it into that home bridge,
right,
with more flexibility. I'm sure there's probably some plugins to make it work with the Harmony remote somehow, but it just seemed like a much cleaner solution for me to just say, all right, let's just boil it down to just this small device, plugging into Homebridge and get a plugin to make it work. And it does. So,
and so when Homebridge updates the plugin for your blasters, do you have to go in and redo anything, or do you have to go in and find your 80 characters again and paste them? Okay.
No, no, not at all. You do an update, it runs it all. Now, granted, I always kind of check and make sure it didn't break something. I mean, but the intention is not that you have to go in and reset everything up.
Yeah.
But again, we are using software that somebody wrote on their own free time and put up on the internet for all of us to download and use. So I just say, with word of caution, you're getting into open source software, you're getting into community-based software. I love it, but just keep in mind, there's no 800 support number to call or no online chat to talk with somebody if you have a problem. You're getting this for free, but you've got to take with it the risk that you are using stuff that other developers, not big brand name developers, have generated for you. So,
So we should kind of catalog this episode with when we talked about Plex, the ability to be able to kind of create your own open source software to be able to have a media server, or let's see, we had a couple others that we were doing the same thing. We were trying to kind of create our own environment, going a little bit, off the grid a little bit to be able to make this happen. So the beauty is there are ways there. If cost is a concern, you have equipment already, and you want to be able to kind of go backwards compatible and be able to control certain things, but still have some of these features. I think this is great. Even though it's something you came up with, I think it's still really good.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Anyway, like I said, we went a little deeper on this. It got into there was some code on the screen. There was some, a lot of text, a lot of numbers. But more than anything, if anybody stuck around to watch this whole thing, just know there are some capabilities to do some of the things you want to do with your home network. More than I realized were available when I first started getting into it myself. I'm now not so frustrated when I go to Best Buy or any other store and look at different smart home devices. I don't automatically say, well, I can only get these 3 products here because that's the only 3 that are HomeKit available. I can now look at a broader scope and say, there's ways I can use this. There's ways I can tie this in, or not feel like I've got to replace my older equipment that uses infrared remotes. I can extend their life a lot more, which has been kind of nice and comforting to know. So.
And just reminding people, if you are concerned about the very first thing Alan said about you need a computer that is always on and dedicated, not necessarily dedicated, but is always on, is in a location, going to stay there. Go back and listen to our Raspberry Pi episode,
absolutely.
Right? Super inexpensive.
You could have $50.
Yep, $50.
$50. You could have a little Raspberry Pi running Homebridge.
Yep.
Sitting, just in a cabinet or closet somewhere.
Because this does not require a lot of processing speed. This is not a heavy processing device that is needed. All this is needed is just to be able to take Wi-Fi information and spit out code, right? I mean, it's a pretty simple task.
Yeah. just FYI, I'm running my Homebridge on my same computer, an old Mac laptop that is probably 8 years old right now. And it's also running my Plex server. So it's sitting in the cabinet. It's running. It's just always on. Yeah, laptop is overkill for it, but I didn't have any other use for it. It was a little too old to be using for day-to-day work, but it runs a Plex server great. And then I just put this Homebridge on top of it, and it does great. So that's what I'm doing it for. Yeah.
Very cool.
All right. Well,
Sweet.
That's going to wrap us. That's all I wanted to share with you today, man.
That wasn't nearly as boring as I thought it would be.
I appreciate that's one of the nicest
I
things
really,
you've said to me.
yeah, I
In a really
really
long time.
expected to be sleeping on this one. So
Yeah, that's good.
yeah, I'm actually intrigued. I might, don't want to go to your head, but I might look into some of these options for myself. I'm not a Homebridge person, or I'm not a HomeKit person, but I like the idea that as Apple moves forward, and knowing that I am a Mac person, knowing that I'm an iOS person, that HomeKit may be the way that I go as it continues to mature. So it's nice to know that I don't have to get stuck with some of my old devices, not being able to use them.
I was going to say that would be ideal, as if somebody was looking to adopt HomeKit, but didn't want to have to wholesale replace all their devices. This is definitely the way to do it. So, cool.
Alan, sorry, real quick. You just made me think of something. Just real quick. Can a Alexa device chime in to the HomeKit that you are setting up, the Homebridge? I mean, will it take that sort of Wi-Fi information from dots that I already have or something, or those communication devices, those will need to be updated and go to HomeKit? Okay.
Yeah.
It's the peripherals that can communicate. Got it. It's
peripherals that are able to communicate with Google or Alexa's or Amazon's Home Network.
Yep.
Can now communicate with Homebridge. But Homebridge can't dialogue with Alexa
Google,
dots or Google Home devices or anything themselves. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Well, Brian,
nice
if
job.
somebody has some questions, we have an email address up on the screen. info@themesh.tv.
Yeah, info@themesh.tv. I mean, if anybody is actually still listening at this point, more power to you. And
Dad's
that's right. That's right. And I'm sure he left it on and just couldn't figure out how to turn it off. Alexa, turn off this podcast. Info@themesh.tv. You can tell us, tell us if you've used something like this, or if you have other alternatives of ways of getting around this issue. Maybe it's from the Alexa side or the Google side. But we're always intrigued. As we go through our process, we're trying to give solutions to other people without just having to buy new devices. It'd be nice to have some solutions to fix what you do, make it work the way you want to without spending a ton of money. And as you can see, we have a website, brothers-in-tech. Sorry, the bourbon is flowing really well.
He is doing well.
It is flowing. So come and check us out, and we've got old episodes, access to that, as well as we're going to have some reviews, and we're going to have the ability to eventually contact us through that as well. So check us out.
Good. All right, guys. Thanks for watching Brothers in Tech, or listening to Brothers in Tech, whichever you're choosing to do. And next time we will be back with a Brothers in Tech suggestions episode. So that'll be fun. We always look forward to coming in with our own suggestions of tech we want to recommend to the audience that we're playing around with or we're liking now. So that'll be fun. We'll do our suggestions on the next episode. So we'll talk to everybody next week. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.